I mentioned a couple of times on the way through this concept of life cycles. It's pretty fundamental to take it back down to a bit of a technical level. It's pretty fundamental to understand how to better manage HVAC, this concept of life cycles. HVAC systems haven't got a life cycle. Their components have life cycles. And these vary. And so it's no different to your car. Your tyres might last a couple of years, but the actual body of the car might last forever. And so what you find is that when you come to look at this, you need to work in that sort of concept of components with different life cycles. And obviously good maintenance is supportive of those life cycles. These numbers come out of the HVAC handbook, and this is the sort of guidance that we as engineers use in terms of providing advice on these sorts of things. And it's determined by, I suppose, duty, it's determined by the level of maintenance and attendance, all those sorts of things, the quality of the plant you put in, a whole range of things, but these are general numbers. So things like air filters, drive belts, bearings, 2-5 years on average. Things like motors, some of the tendency fit-out air distribution, things, VAV boxes and what have you, and the controls, again, around the 10 years. Things like cooling towers, pumps, chillers, boilers, 20 years if well maintained. But they're all different, and we need to understand that when we come to put a commercial framework around these things. So around these fundamental technical life cycles, you effectively have a management or even an opportunity cycle, if you like. And that's where we're heading next week. We're going to step through the cycle and look at what we've talked about today by way of the kit, from a design perspective, installation perspective, management, operation, maintenance, tuning, and then a retrofit opportunity perspective. From the perspective of owner or building manager as such. So just in closing, I'll firm up on that analogy around the car, because it's always, I suppose, useful to actually pick up an analogy that actually is quite useful, because it just does change the way you think about things. And as I said at the outset, that's my objective today, to get you to think about HVAC a little bit differently. HVAC systems in buildings really are like cars. You think about your car ownership and your car ownership paradigm and how you think about your car. There is a level of amenity. And in that, there's some utility. Yes, it will get me to and from work reliably. I get a level of comfort. Those of you can remember when we used to buy cars that didn't have air conditioning, what a revelation that was. The thing is reliable. I don't have to worry about getting the phone call at 2 o'clock in the afternoon from my wife that tells me the car's broken down again and I can't get the kids from school. So you pay for that reliability as such. The thing is safe. No, I'm not going to put my daughter into anything other than a 5-star NCAP car. And there's a standard as well. There's people that want to drive a Mercedes and there's people who want to drive Hyundai. And it's the same with air conditioning. A premium grade building will have a Mercedes air conditioning system, and perhaps something in a different part of the market will have a Hyundai air conditioning system. That's important when you come to perhaps put Hyundai chillers into a Mercedes air conditioning system. Maybe you shouldn't do things like that. Compliance. We register our car, it's got to be roadworthy. We've got some commercial compliance around our leases and things like that, very similar to HVAC systems and the buildings that they live in. Obviously, similar sorts of costs. You've got inputs around energy, you've got inputs around maintenance and service, you've got issues around warranty, you've got costs around compliance. You've got to manage all of that, certainly if you're looking at that as a tax claim for a business vehicle and what have you. And obviously, you've got a bank or a finance company sitting over your shoulder in a lot of cases who really own the car, and you've just got stewardship of the thing. And at the end of the day, you've also got this concept of life cycle, both technical and financial. We all get to a stage with a car and you say, well, geez, it's about 7 or 8 years old. It's starting to cost me a bit much. Maybe I better start looking for another car and pass this on to somebody else. Is it a technical or a financial life cycle issue? The two are interconnected. You need to plan for that. Well, I think I can't afford to do it this year. I'll do it next year. You need to manage that process. You've got to take a deep breath and go and talk to a dealer or a used car salesman, or go on carsales.com, what have you. And also, you've got to have some sense of measurance around that, whether it's anecdotal or by way of keeping some sort of record around how much you're spending and how the thing's going as such. So the analogy is quite good. So when you go down to the basement and have a bit of a walk around with your maintenance contractor, perhaps just have a think about the HVAC system and the components in a similar way that you might think about your own car. It's quite a powerful analogy.